Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Today we're going to be talking about data mapping and transformation, the secret to SharePoint 2010 success. My name is Mark Rye. I'm VP of Sales with Parent Corporation, and I'm joined today by Mike Moderani, SharePoint architect. And we're going to be talking about the importance of setting up a taxonomy or an information structure within SharePoint and migrating legacy content into that structure in the overall success of a SharePoint implementation. To get us started, though, what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about some of the problems that are out there in terms of the information that we're up against, how it's growing, and how we need to get a handle on it in terms of getting it organized. So the topic that we're really talking about is unstructured information. So all of the content in the Word, Excel, PowerPoint files, even emails within an organization that is growing so quickly. Growth rates right now are estimated around 62% on this unstructured content, and that surpasses the content that's in databases that we're more familiar with how to handle, the structured content. The unstructured content, the growth rates have surpassed that. And much of this content is residing in shared network drives or older SharePoint sites where there's really no management around the content itself. So what we find is this content sitting out there, there's no content lifecycle management or records management around the files. So essentially nothing gets deleted. It gets created and put into these repositories, but it doesn't get deleted when it's no longer needed or no longer required by the organization. There's very little organization of content when we look at the legacy structure that we're trying to improve upon, be it in shared drives or earlier versions of SharePoint. Very little organization, so users have a hard time locating files that they're interested in referencing. And these two things, the fact that there's no files being deleted and they're poorly organized, lead to the fact that users recreate content at a much higher rate than they really should have to. So I know there's a file out on the system. I'm unable to find it. I spend 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever the case is, looking for the file. At some point I just give up and recreate it. And what we end up is another version of probably very similar content being added to the repository. So in this case, because there's no organization, there's no content lifecycle management, the repository continues to grow. Now, most of the organizations we speak with have a pretty strong vision of what enterprise content management could do for them, what they'd like to have happen, and that is really to have all of this unstructured content being created, managed, and accessed and eventually disposed of through one central system. The reality of it is, though, that hasn't taken place. Over the past 10 and 15 years, there's been many implementations of enterprise content management functionality from vendors other than Microsoft, and obviously SharePoint has grown up in that time as well. But the effectiveness of these applications as true enterprise content management systems has fallen short of that goal. And from our point of view, a lot of that reflects on the lack of focus on dealing with the content and the structure of that content and the organization of that content in the target system. So the focus tends to be get the system in place and then let the users use it, as opposed to get the system in place, set up the system by which we're going to organize content effectively within this new system, migrate any viable content out of the old locations, be it the shared drives or legacy SharePoint sites, get it into the new system, draw the users in, and then actually begin using it as that sole location for enterprise content management for the unstructured content. So we come to SharePoint 2010, potentially to the rescue. A lot of clients of ours are looking at SharePoint 2010 as a chance to really do it right this time. So certainly the features and functionality of SharePoint have improved over the years in terms of records management and content management. So it's really an opportunity to step back and say, what do we need to do? What's the structures that we need to put in place in SharePoint so that it can really act as this repository for records management and enterprise content management? The goal is obviously being better collaboration so folks can actually find the content that they want to reference and work on, as well as being able to manage that through its life cycle. So when that piece of content is no longer valid to the organization, having a way of identifying that and marking it for disposition or removal from the system. We want to have better access to information so people can, information is no longer siloed in specific libraries or behind security permissions that are old and out of date and are just inhibiting the sharing of information. And obviously 2010 allows, if we're moving especially from a shared drive environment into a highly structured SharePoint 2010 environment, we're looking at much improved search capabilities. So these are some of the things that we're hoping for and our clients are hoping for. But obviously there's work to be done to get there. So in order to help us understand what needs to be done, what are some of the approaches to consider, I'm going to invite Mike Moderani, again, one of our SharePoint architects who has a boatload of experience in this area, to walk us through some of the things he's seen that work, some of the things that don't work, and some of the things that we really need to consider as we're moving forward with 2010 to get that information architecture correct. So at this point, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to give control of the GoToMeeting to you as well, and you'll be able to pick up on that. Just before I do, for any of the listeners and attendees today, if there's questions throughout this presentation, feel free to open the GoToMeeting sidebar, and you'll see a question section near the bottom, and you just document your question in there, and we'll come back to that at the end of the session and make sure we address those. At this point, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can keep carrying us forward.
Thank you, Mark, and good morning, everyone. In the next 20 to 25 minutes, we're going to talk about the SharePoint 2010 in general, the challenges that organizations have had in the past, and what we have seen the best way or the best practices to address some of those challenges in organizing your document and records management and organizing your taxonomy in a proper way to make sure you achieve your desired results. As Mark has mentioned, we have taken this webinar to talk about SharePoint to the rescue. However, SharePoint to the rescue has a lot of requirements that you need to follow to make sure that you achieve what you're looking to have implemented in your organizations. For sure, SharePoint has the answers, but it needs some work, some prerequisite work to make sure that it addresses your actual issues that you have had in the past. If you look at this slide here, what we call it the mystery of Chimney Rock, you can actually get to anywhere in this map from A to Z throughout different ways. And you can make your own adventure to start from one and end up at the bottom. However, this is very confusing for somebody who does not really know how this map works or does not know where the information is. SharePoint is very similar that it provides you the information, it hosts the information, but if we don't have proper taxonomy, if you don't have a proper information management structure, it might be very difficult to find from browsing to it or from searching the actual information and getting back the right results. Traditionally, if you look at records management, in the past few years has been evolving. It started as physical records. We have the librarians, or we have file cabinets, and we have dedicated people that actually managing the actual records without really sharing the knowledge or the information with the rest of the others, because they were dedicated people as librarians or records management keepers that know exactly how the system works, and if that person leaves the company, basically it is a chaos if nobody else was managing the actual information. And we get into, throughout the years, we got into the electronic records management, and we'll start storing documents and files within file shares or within other enterprise content management. And from there, chaos started to happen, that we have so many files and so many data stored on shared drives, or even in SharePoint. If somebody had used SharePoint in the past, 2003 or 2007, and could not find the information, and we are in denial that the information is there and there's nothing else we can do because it's working fine. Yes, it's working fine for the people who has managed the information, but it might not be working correctly for the people that will want to find and use the information. What we end up having actually is frustrated users have a system that it is an enterprise content management. If it's not set up properly, they get very frustrated that they cannot find the information, or they can find the relevant information that it makes sense to them. And after we settle that, yes, the information is there, but we cannot find it, that we're probably going to start bargaining or negotiating between the end users and the actual document management or records management keepers, that yes, we have an issue here, and we probably have to come up with a solution to actually maintain or have a better system to implement for enterprise content management. And we get so overwhelmed that there's such a big job because we did not plan properly in the past on how to structure the content. We did not look at some policies we have to implement in place. And these things are pretty much common in any organization that have not done IAM classification or IAM management, and we have not defined some policies around the information management in your organization, and we end up accepting that we have an issue and we want to solve it. And from here, I would like to turn it over to Mark to talk about the slides as well.
Sure, Mike. Thank you. So traditionally, when we speak with our clients, they've gone down one of two paths with their legacy content, their system implementation, and the eventual migration or lack of migration. So we're really talking about content today and how to get it structured and organized. And one of the approaches that has really limited the system implementations in the past has been the migrate the mess approach, where there's such a mess sitting in the file shares or the shared network drives. We realize that there's the ability for a new system such as SharePoint to improve the access and searchability of the information, that we just move the content without cleaning it up or getting it better organized. And for clients that have gone through this, the mess doesn't go away. So 5 and 10 years down the road, that mess is still there. And it's because it wasn't properly organized, and because metadata wasn't properly tagged to files, we don't really get all of the benefits of the target system. It's really just files that are a little more searchable, that are really gumming up the new system. The other approach, conversely, is the day forward approach, where again, we don't know what to do with the legacy content, so just leave it where it is. And we speak with many clients who have gone with the day forward approach, and really found that content doesn't find its way into the system over time. There's this thought that over time, either the content will be moved by the users passively, or the content will be replaced with more relevant content in the new system. But the bottom line is if we leave the legacy content where it is, the users will continue to work with it where it is, and that will limit the adoption of the new system, and it will limit the ability to do true records management and enterprise content management, all of the real rich features that something like SharePoint 2010 provides. We miss out on, because the bulk of the content, that legacy content that is still very much a part of doing business, is sitting in another repository. So what we really want to do is look at a structure that's going to allow us to draw in that legacy content. We'll do some analysis and find what's the most viable or content of the most value, but get that in, get it organized, get some metadata on it so it can actually come to life in the new SharePoint environment. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mark. So from traditionally migrating any documents or any file system from one system to another, from a file share to SharePoint, or from a content management system to SharePoint, or it does not have to be SharePoint, you have to have a plan for the users to actually adopt and have a successful implementation at the end. Initially, what we have came up with a migration strategy towards document management system or records management system to best practices drive success. Initially, what we recommend is we have to establish some business requirements. We need to understand what's lacking in the current system and what is the pain points that all the users are having from an IT infrastructure and from the business users that will drive the change to a new system. What things that we need to have in the new enterprise content management to make sure we have addressed all the challenges they have currently, and what the new features and that we want to implement to make sure we support the needs of the organizations. Throughout that, we always recommend to develop what we call a governance plan. A governance plan does not have a start and an end date in my perspective. You start with the governance plan when you start implementing collaboration in document records management system. Then it has to evolve. You have to show in the governance plan who has responsibility to do what are the actual implementations that is needed, what changes we have to make sure that we are supporting in the organizations. And this governance plan, it starts with the project, and it does not end with the project, because it's always revolving. Information is always changing. Organizations might have structural changes as well. So the governance plans will have to actually be updated and evolve throughout the time. But from a migration or implementation of an enterprise content management system, you have to define as well some technical architecture to make sure that the system we are implementing will support the business needs of the organization, will support the business needs of the users. We'll make sure that whatever we have implemented will support the growth as well. So we have to have a very solid technical architecture to make sure that we have some capacity planning for the future. And once we have done all the actual implementation and migration, if we have a migration in place, we want to drive adoption and change management. That's basically for the business users to make sure they are very familiar with the new system. They understand SharePoint, they understand the features of SharePoint, what you can and cannot do, what things that you can do out of the box, what things that has to be done as customized, how do I do things. So change management and driving adoption. Again, it's similar to governance plan that you have to start from at the beginning, and it has to run throughout the project to make sure once you flip the switch that the business users are actually understanding the actual system and have no fear of using the new enterprise content management. Because part of the most challenging we have encountered is challenging items are accepting the change. Everybody usually is comfortable with what they have currently, even though they might know it's not meeting the requirements and it needs to be updated. They need to have a new system in place, but they are still comfortable because they know it well. So the challenge of adopting a new system is always big, So you need to have this kind of change management plan to make sure that the users are comfortable with what we are implementing. So from a SharePoint perspective, what we do in SharePoint, if we look at the architecture of SharePoint to make sure it addresses properly the taxonomy that we have been talking about, it has a very structured approach to how to implement a SharePoint portal or a SharePoint collaboration site or any document or records management. It starts with what we call a site collection in terms of this is your website, and from there we can have multiple sites. It goes down to individual sites. For example, we can have a site for HR from a corporate perspective, a site for sales and marketing. We can have a site for finance, one for IT, and from there we can derive that into multiple sites as team sites or collaborative sites or project sites that are basically attached to specific groups to collaborate or to create some documents before they publish them on the actual portal or into a records management site. And we can have as well individual sites such as my site. I can have my own space. I can go and add my own documents in a document library or in a folder structure, and I can have a lot of interaction between myself and others if I decide to share this information. So from a SharePoint perspective, it is very wide. You have the flexibility to store information as much as you want as an individual in your own personal site or within your team or within your department. And if we have the IAM classification structured properly, we have a taxonomy, we will be able to publish the information that is needed to the actual portal or document center. So what powers enterprise content management in SharePoint? There are a lot of things that we have, or Microsoft has considered into 2010 to make sure that it addresses the challenges of an enterprise content management system, and we can address all those challenges in specific manner. From an ECM, we have what we call a content type. A content type might have, it is a type of content. It is not a document type, but it can be attached to a specific document type, such as PowerPoint, Word, or Excel, that contains specific information. It can have a metadata. It can have a retention policy. If we have records management, it will have a workflow. If we have specific workflow attached to the actual content type, it will have templates. So what it is when I go and upload a document, I can specify a content type such as it is an HR policy, and if I select this document as an HR policy, I will probably be asked to fill out some metadata about this actual document that is associated with the content type. And based on that, if I have a workflow, I can basically say, because it's an HR policy, I need my manager to approve it, and I need the VP to approve it, maybe the president to approve it as well, to make sure it's published or it's promoted properly throughout the portal. And if this policy will turn into a record in the future, I might apply a retention policy to it as well, so I can be able to archive it or delete it, whatever the policy says, in 2, 3, or 5, or 7 years from now. So from an ECM perspective in SharePoint, we have the content types, we have the metadata. As well, we have what we call a content organizer. What it means is based on the type of content you have or type of documents, it can basically organize and store the information in different places based on how you tag the information. So it will follow a file plan or a file classification that you have put in place in the business requirements sessions earlier in the days when you have done your IAM classifications. And based on this file plan, it will follow what you have put together in terms of where I want to store the information, so I don't have to do a lot of manual stuff. And the reason to do that is it will have consistent information in there. The documents and the records are classified properly, and I can easily retrieve it through browsing to it or through search. So what is a corporate taxonomy? So when we look at taxonomy, is a way of classifying and organizing any items or any data on the portal or in any system. Basically, it can be we are organizing documents. We can organize in we can be probably organizing calendar if you want. We can organize tasks. We can organize sites and folders. It is a very structured way to store information in a portal. And the reason we use that because we want to have a very common language, or we want to have a very similar tagging mechanism, or very similar structure that everybody can understand within the organization, and we're not doing things on our own. So it's a matter of making sure that everybody's following the rules, if you want to call it that, so I don't go outside the boundaries in terms of classifying content. And the reason we do that is will make it easier for the actual system to publish content or distribute content into multiple repositories based on how the actual content is classified, and that will eliminate the manual publishing process because every document knows where it should be set in. It also helps the actual search. I have heard many times that when I go into organization and they have used search in the past, that search is broken and search doesn't give me the right information. Now, guess what? The problem is not search, because search will go and crawl the information and present it to you based on the keywords. The problem is how you have classified your information based on the metadata and taxonomy. If you have done that job properly, search will give you great results. So what are the benefits of having a proper taxonomy? Basically, it provides the organization to have specific types of data to be classified properly. We know exactly where the location of information is, where we're storing the information. And if, from my perspective, navigation still is a key element of finding information, even though if you have a really great search results, but some people will go through the navigation of a portal to access the information they're looking for. So if we have proper taxonomy, I know exactly what I'm looking for, what kind of information is stored in which site or which list, and I will be able to find it easily. If I hit a site or a list or a document library that has thousands of information in there, because I have proper taxonomy, I can filter in that information and get what I want within seconds. I don't need to guess what it is. It has a lot of impact on how search results are like I said, are ranked, or the relevancy in the search results. Proper taxonomy, it will give you better search results as well. So the cost of doing it right is why we are talking about proper taxonomy. Why are we talking about a better IAM classification? Because it is a single source of managing the information. It doesn't matter how big my portal is. It doesn't matter how big my document records management is. It might be 100 gigs or it might be 5 terabytes. Because I have provided it properly, because I have managed it properly to begin with, I have defined my classification, I have defined my metadata, my taxonomy, I have defined my sites, it will be easier for me to actually use it, and will be easier for me in the future if I want to maintain it and change information, because I have done it at the farm level. It will be able to propagate any changes to anybody without much maintenance in the future. So initially what we do is we want to start doing some classifications. We want to look at what the existing records are. We want to identify what the structured and unstructured data is, and we want to see where are the gaps, where we have failed in the past, to make sure that we are actually addressing these issues and structuring the information the proper way. So we want to identify how much we have to have structured data, how much flexibility you want to give to the actual users. I believe in a balance where you have to have a very locked down taxonomy, we have to have a very locked down structure, but from a SharePoint perspective, because it has the ability for the collaboration, and it gives you the ability to play and to team up with other team members to provide information. You want to have some flexibility for them to give them some unstructured data, but within a contained area, within probably a project area or a team collaboration area that does not impact the actual corporate portal. What we need to do is we want to standardize as well on how we are naming the actual documents, on how we're naming the actual document libraries or sites, or the tags that we have to provide from a metadata and taxonomy perspective. We want to make sure for example, it matches the organizational hierarchy. It might match the function you do. So basically, we will work with your team to make sure how the IM classification will be structured to make sure that it fits your needs. And from there, when the IM classification has been developed, we're going to start looking into how that will fit within SharePoint from a content types perspective. We'll look at, for example, a feature that SharePoint has, what we call a content type hub. It is an enterprise content type where I can have multiple content types that is managed and stored in a central repository, but it's used in multiple forms or in multiple portals, and make sure that I have addressed all the actual document types. I have addressed all the actual information that I have in the organization to make sure that it has a house to it in the content types. And from there, after I have defined my content types, what we go through right now is organizing the site columns. And site columns in SharePoint means metadata. So every metadata, if I selected, I have 100 content types. I have, for example, HR policy. I have accounting. I have payables. These are all content types. I have IT policies. I have change password policies or IT help desk. All these things are defined as content types in SharePoint. But for us to better classify the document, we have to associate a metadata to a document, and that metadata is usually stored within content types. And the reason we do it that way is for better management, so we can centrally manage all the metadata. In the technical term in SharePoint, it's called site columns. A site columns of metadata can be which department it is, what the language of the document it is, when does it expire, who's modifying it, who's creating it, all these things that can be actually stored in what we call a term store in SharePoint. So where do we apply the corporate metadata and taxonomy? We have multiple ways to apply the actual metadata when we want to tag information in SharePoint. It can be, like I said previously, it can be any document. It can be, if we are using a blog, wikis, web pages, media, people. It can be against an image, against a media file. So what it does when I upload a document, it will go and ask me to tag the document, and that will actually help two major things in SharePoint. One, what we call it a metadata navigation and filtering. In SharePoint, when you have a document library or any list, if you have metadata in it, it will give you like a filtering navigation that based on the metadata that is associated with the actual document library and based on the documents that are stored in the document, you'll be able to filter on the actual metadata. So if I have 2,000 items in a library, I can easily filter it down to less than 10 based on what information I'm looking for. Also, like I said, search results will be a lot higher if we have managed metadata, because I can, the way SharePoint search works, it looks at not only the actual title of the document or the content, it looks at how the actual document is tagged and how well the document is ranked. And based on the usability of the document, it will show up in the search results. So we have a few things that we can do for metadata and taxonomy. We can have structured metadata that defines the organization and relationship information, or we can have some unstructured as well metadata that will allow the actual users to go into their own team collaboration sites and define their own keywords and define their own information management to give them some flexibility in terms of how we want the actual teams to manage their information. So the taxonomy definition, as we have a classification of data, we have structured taxonomy. Like I said, it's basically predefined, and we don't allow the actual users to modify what the taxonomy looks like, or what we call it is the taxonomy in SharePoint or unstructured data, will allowing the users to add their own tags and creating an ad hoc organizational structure. Usually this is used mostly in wikis and blogs, where you can go and add your own keywords or your own tag clouds into a document. So basically, if we look at the structure here, we have a site with information architecture there, and we have enterprise keywords. We have two terms, term 1 and term 2, and we have multiple documents that are stored in the actual portal. So from the left-hand side in the yellow, this is what we call it some structured taxonomy, where we have specific terms that are used and will be defined against documents. So from a structured taxonomy in SharePoint, well, there's a service called Term Store or Manage Metadata Service that will allow you to define all your terms. For example, a term store will have provinces, it will have departments in there, and all those terms are actually associated with fields in SharePoint. From an unstructured perspective, basically I have a document and that doesn't follow the term store, and what it does is I will be able to go and add my own tags to where I will be able to rate it if I want to, give it some stars. I can add some terms on my own, I can add some tags if I want to. So I can comment on it, and this is what we call it the taxonomy. It basically allows you to add some more information against a document if you want to. So the term store, it consists of 4 different levels. When we define, for example, we have the term store for Perm Corp, and in there we have groups of basically countries, and under the countries we're going to have a term set of provinces, and under the provinces we're going to have multiple terms such as Ontario, Quebec, and all the provinces we have in here. So when I go and tag the upload a document, it will ask me which province does it belong to, and I will be able to pick from the terms which province I want to associate this document with. So initially, on the left-hand side, this is where you manage and promote your information in the metadata. In the second step, this is where I go in at the property of a document where I attach some information. And at the third stage, where I can map the information within the actual document property on how I want to present it in search, for example. Some benefits and best practices for both. From a structured perspective, it enforces the content organization to establish some guidelines. It ensures that the proper use of the actual information and tagging of information for corporate data, and it allows you some ease of use to navigate to the actual information that you're looking for. From an unstructured perspective, it gives the actual user the flexibility to tag information and define some relationships between a document and other information has been uploaded on the system as well. So we've talked a lot about structured information management, content classifications, taxonomy, managed metadata, structured metadata, unstructured metadata, and the idea here, like we said at the beginning of the presentation, is to make sure that when you are storing information in the system, in the document or records management, or you have a collaboration system, you want to make sure that you find your information easy. This is, for example, a screenshot of search result page that it's driven by metadata. On the left-hand side, for example, we see what we call a refinement panel. All this information, that you can see it properly on your screen, are driven by the metadata. So we have the result types. Based on what is coming back from the query that it has been completed in the search, it will give me, based on the results that I have seen, how do I want to filter the information on. It knows the type of documents. It knows which site it's coming from. It knows which company, for example. It knows the dates. It knows the authors. So all these things can help the actual user to find the information very, very easy. In my case, I use search quite a bit because I know that we have defined the metadata properly and we have defined the taxonomy properly. So when I do a search and I get back results of 5,000 items in the search results, I'm not scared at all because I have a refinement panel that will allow me to filter the 5,000 to usually less than 20, and I will be able to find the information a lot easier. Also, because of a proper taxonomy and proper metadata, I will be able to, or SharePoint search will be able to give me some relevancy options in terms of how do I want to sort my results. It will give me some information about the actual results that I have in a specific record. It gives me information about preview of, if we're using FAST in this example, in FAST search, it will give you a preview of the actual documents. On the right-hand side, it gives me some related search as documents or as people, if I want to. It gives me some federated search. And this is all driven because I have structured my taxonomy properly and I have tagged my documents in a manner that it will be visible in the search. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Mike. That was really a look at what are the things that we can do to improve the experience in SharePoint 2010. What I want to wrap up with is the how. So how can we actually get there? I'm going to take a quick look at the questions panel just to see if there's anything there. Okay, so there's nothing there. Now, if there is anything, I'll check again at the end of the session, so feel free to enter anything in there. The how is really how do we go from 10 million files in the shared drive or 10 million files sitting across various legacy SharePoint sites, get them cleaned up and organized into this new taxonomy that we develop, tag it with the appropriate metadata, and get it live in SharePoint 2010. And that's really an area that Param excels at. One of the things we do with our clients is help them understand really what are we up against, how complex is actually doing this, and what do we need to consider. And some of the things we need to look at there are the different technology bits involved to start off. So if we're looking at legacy content, we need to do some analysis on that, and we'll look at things from deduplication analysis, indexing and categorizing the content, disposition processing, which is going to help us identify files that are no longer valid and doesn't make sense to bring forward, as well as the actual migration bit. So there's a lot going on from a software and technology point of view to be able to build out a taxonomy and take content from different repositories and get it mapped appropriately into this new taxonomy. The information governance point that Mike spoke to early on is really important because now we're actually talking about making decisions on live content. So what are those rules by which we need to play? So how, if we're going to identify files that are out of date and due for disposition, what rules do we use to make those decisions, and who would actually sign off on that? So if we're analyzing a legacy SharePoint site, we find out of the 1 million files sitting in this site, 250,000 of them are no longer valid. Who in the organization is responsible for making the decision that we can not only not migrate those forward, but delete those? So there's some information governance that is really key to a project like this. We need a process that's going to allow the users who are working with content in the current environment to be able to weigh in on what's this taxonomy going to look like in SharePoint 2010, what metadata is going to be useful for them to be able to drill down through that search to be able to find what they're looking for. So we need to be able to involve the business or the users to some degree in this process to get some critical feedback as we're working with their content, or we're not going to end up with a result that's very useful for them. And the last part of that goes hand in hand, and that's the change management aspect. It's how do we help the users move from that older SharePoint site or the shared network drive / file shares they've been used to working with, and then move into this new, much more structured environment for information management, dealing with a real corporate taxonomy maybe for the first time on a scale like this, so that they're going to be able to find the information they're used to working with. And again, something that Param excels in, being able to provide the tools and the training needed to be able to get the users in as well as the content into the new system. So when we look at these 4 areas, really what we've done over the past 10 years is wrap those up into what we call the parallel process. And the parallel process is really about taking that legacy content, building out that taxonomy and the metadata, and then organizing the legacy content and migrating it into the new system in a way that the users will be able to use effectively. How do we do it? The approach is really based on a combination of classification experts, so information management folks that really understand the taxonomy side of things, or how to build out a structure, a folder structure where we can map files into and store files, and a combination of this process and technology. So it's using some advanced technology for the capture and analysis of content, and guiding both our project team on our side as well as representatives from the client through this project process where they can weigh in on key aspects. So they're really comfortable with the taxonomy that's being developed, with the metadata, how things are being tagged, so that when they move into SharePoint and they start doing searches, things are going to show up the way they expect. And it's this semi-automated approach is what we refer to as the best approach, because we're combining this human expertise in this taxonomy and classification development and mapping of content to the proper location with the machine-based indexing, categorization, migration type technology that's available. When we look at the specific bits of technology that we use, we can break them really into 2 parts. So we have the parallel classify software, which is a proprietary software developed by Param, which does capture analysis, mapping, disposition, processing, and migration. So it's really how are we handling files from that legacy environment to the new environment. And that's a software suite that's used by our team. So it's not something that a client needs to become familiar with. Our folks are going to use that and get the content into the right place. The tool that allows the client to weigh in is the Parallel Portal. And the Parallel Portal is a web portal, and it's really a window into this classification and mapping environment, which is going to allow the clients to weigh in on things like duplicate processing, for example. So how do I identify what is a true duplicate? Once we've done the technical analysis, there are some cases where we wouldn't want to delete duplicate files and others where we do, and we're very good at helping set the rules around that, but it's certainly something that we would want the client to weigh in on. The Parallel Portal also provides a window into this mapping and transformation environment, because you can envision we're going from one state to another. So what we do is we display the 2 states and show the clients how files are being mapped. So if something used to sit here in the legacy environment, where is it going to end up in SharePoint 2010, and how is it going to be tagged with metadata? So we do this offline. We're not working with the live environment. We're not working with SharePoint yet. We're creating a mock environment, and we're giving access to the portal through the portal, which really allows the client to test drive this environment long before we move any files. So we can really nail down the organization of content, the tagging of metadata, how it's going to look and feel in SharePoint long before we make any do any migration event. And that's really been a key to our success, is allowing our clients to test drive things, give us some feedback, allow us to tweak it, and go on from there. The other thing the portal does is it allows us to handle the change management aspects of the project. And one way it does that is our clients commonly will put the portal up on a projector in a departmental meeting and say, okay, here's our content now in our shared drive or in our team sites, and here's the new SharePoint structure that we're moving towards, and here's how the files are being mapped around. So again, ahead of the actual migration, we can start that change management process, help people get a sense as to how things will be organized, give us some feedback along the way to make sure that we're getting it exactly the way they want it. So it's going to be useful for the business, but still effective as a records management / enterprise content management platform. And the last thing the portal does is, once we've actually done the migration, so we've mapped the content, we've done that transformation from old system to new system, and the content's been migrated into SharePoint 2010, then the portal really sits there for all of the users now, not just the project team, but any of the users that were impacted by this migration event. It provides an interactive map that says, if you're looking for a file and you're still confused or you're nervous about the new system, come in, navigate the way you used to. So a good analogy is in a shared drive where a particular user will know a pocket of the shared drive really well. Come in and navigate the file share or the shared drive the way you used to in the portal, and then you just have to hit the locate button once you find the files you're interested in. And what the portal will do is display how that content has been mapped into this new taxonomy in SharePoint. So it takes it really provides a bridge between the old system and the new system to help with that true change management, so that the users can gradually move from the old way of thinking about how information is being organized to this new higher state of information organization in SharePoint 2010. So just to recap, what we're really doing at Param is we're looking at things like the taxonomy development, so helping build out how do we organize that content for best use, and that would include the metadata development as well, or analysis of the metadata that's been developed for SharePoint. We do the actual content mapping, so looking at your legacy content, analyze it, find the files of value, reorganize them, and migrate them into the new system. We'll do disposition processing as well. So if there are retention rules that have been developed by the organization to say that an HR file of this type should be kept for a certain length of time, we can automate the application of those and report on what files are due for disposition, so that those older files that are out of date and really should be deleted don't get migrated forward. And obviously we handle the technical migration, so moving those legacy files, getting them associated to the right location in the taxonomy in SharePoint, the right location in SharePoint, and tagged with the right metadata are all things that we do. But it's easy to get caught up in the technical aspects of what we do. I want to leave you with the underlying themes of our projects are really around helping the records management policies of the organizations be implemented in the new system, because that's really what's going to let us move towards true enterprise content management, is being able to organize things better and be able to put a system in place where as files become out of date, they're removed from the system. And really the SharePoint adoption. So it's about helping users bridge between a familiar information structure in a legacy environment to a new information structure in a newer system implementation, and help take some of that change and some of that fear away as they move from one to the other, because we can really bridge the gap with some of our tools and processes. That's what we wanted to cover off today. I'm going to take one quick check into the questions panel to see if there's been anything added there. I don't see anything added to this point, so at this point I'm going to wrap up the session. We're just on time. I'm going to thank everyone for taking the time to sit in today, and there will be a follow-up to the attendees today with a link to this presentation should you wish to share it with others within your organization. So thank you, Mike, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you.